Hello everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel Homeopathic Super Sessions by Dr. Jagose. Today I have received a request from one of my viewers to do a video on a very short chapter of H.A. Roberts, chapter number 31, the disease classification, a summary. Now this chapter is only one page, but it contains very important information as it will summarize what we have seen through the different chapters on myosm, which Dr. Robert describes. So let us see today what this chapter has to tell us. So in this chapter 31, disease classification, a summary, Robert tells us about what he has seen or how he has classified the disease of myosm in a very short but concise manner in this chapter 31, which is only a one-page chapter. So now let us see what this chapter has and how we can study it. So in this chapter, Robert summarizes the different stigmas that will be associated with the patient due to the myosms. So out here, the patient is there, and because of that, he has either an acute or a chronic disease, and it is because of the myosm. So our great master, Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, has firstly given the introduction of myosm in his organon of 6th edition in the aphorism number 5. Out here, he tells us that all the acute and the chronic diseases are because of the acute and the chronic myosms. So Dr. Robert tells us that when a person is suffering from a miasmatic disease and later on he is cured, maybe by allopathy, then the stigma remains on the body, which will indicate a particular myosm. For example, a person is suffering from smallpox. Now, as you all know, smallpox has been eradicated, but this is just for an example to make you understand. And after the smallpox is all right, the patient has a stigma on the face of smallpox, that is deep-pitted scars on the face. Now, these deep-pitted scars on the face is a stigma of the syphilitic myosm. So the stigma is nothing but a taint or the residual effect which is there as a result of the myosm which has been cured. So we can say that after the person recovers or is cured from a chronic disease, especially a chronic disease, the stigma will remain on the body in the form of the myosm. So this stigma, Dr. Robert has enumerated very nicely and concisely what this different stigma is there of the different myosms. So different myosms have different shades of stigma, each one having its own characteristic. So the stigmas are there of the psoric myosm, of the psychotic myosm, and the syphilitic myosm, but each has its own characteristics. So therefore, if you know the taint or the stigma of a particular myosm, you can come to know what are its different characteristics. All the stigmas can be present in one patient. Well, as you all know, that a person may be harboring either a single myosm or a complex myosm. So the stigma can be seen, not only one stigma, but all the three stigmas of all the three myosms, that is the psora, psychotic, and syphilitic myosm, can be seen in the patient. But the most important point to remember is that, please remember that only one stigma, which is predominant, will override the others. That means the patient may have a complex disease with more than one myosm, but whichever myosm is predominant, that will be evident to the physician. So please remember that all the patients may have all the myosm, but only one is prominent at a point in time. In other words, we can say that all the diseases has all the myosms, but only one is prominent at a point in time. Similarly, all the remedies in our homeopathic Metra Medica have all the myosms, but only one is prominent at a point in time. For example, the drug sulfur. We all know that it is a king of antipsoric. So out here, Sulfur has all the three miasms, psora, syphilitic, and psychotic miasm, but the one which is predominant is the psoric miasm. So therefore, we say sulfur is the king of antisoric. Therefore, we say that sulfur is predominant with the psoric miasm. Similarly, in a disease condition also, say for example, bronchial asthma. So bronchial asthma could be psoric, it could be psychotic, it could be syphilitic. But if the patient has, on a very general level, we can classify bronchial asthma as a psychotic miasm. Why? Because it deals with vasoconstriction of the bronchi or the bronchioles, accumulation of fluid or accumulation of mucus, difficult expectoration, and it has also aggravation in the rainy season. So this is the feature of the psychotic miasm. So therefore, all the diseases are multimiasmatic, but one being prominent at a point in time. So therefore, Robert emphasizes the fact that all the stigmas can be present in one patient, but he emphasizes that only one is prominent at a point in time. So he summarizes the miasms, psora, psychotic, and syphilitic, saying that in psora, there are only functional disturbances or functional changes. The disease is always reversible. In psychosis, there is infiltration, there is deposits, there is hypertrophy, there is hyperplasia. In syphilitic taint, you get ulceration, or you get, he's described it as ulcerative, or you can get ulcerations, you can get degeneration of the syphilitic taint. So out here, very nicely, in practically 2 words, he has described the taint of the miasms. I repeat, in psoric miasm, functional changes, psychotic, infiltration, induration, deposits, in syphilitic, ulceration, and degeneration and destruction. If miasm is suppressed by modern medication, it makes its way deeper into the organism. So Dr. Roberts says that if a person has a chronic disease, and the chronic disease naturally in homeopathy is due to a chronic miasm, but as you all know, our modern medicine friends, they do not believe in this. So they try to find out the cause of the disease, and they give a medicine which will combat which will target the cause of the disease. So by doing so, what are they doing? They are just suppressing the disease. So if the miasm is suppressed by modern medication, then it will make its way deeper into the organism. That means what? It goes from the periphery to the center, or the disease travels more deeper from the periphery to the center. It travels from less important organs to more important organs. So basically, the miasms under modern medication, they are suppressed, and the disease travels from less important organs to the more important organs. The syphilitic stigma, when suppressed, localizes onto the meninges of the brain. So Dr. Roberts says that if a patient is having the syphilitic stigma, and with modern medicine when suppressed, it generally localizes itself on the meninges of the brain. Other parts which are to be affected also is the throat, the larynx, the bones, and the periosteum. Well, in the psoric stigma, when suppressed, it has action on the nervous system and the nerve centers. So the psoric miasm, when suppressed, it will act on the CNS and the different nerve centers. It produces functional disturbances which are better by surface manifestation. So though it has been suppressed, it has only in the CNS, you will only get functional disturbances, no pathological change will take place, and which are better by surface manifestation. Surface manifestation meaning what? Better by natural elimination, like better by perspiration, passing urine, passing stool, or the menstrual flow. So all the psoric stigma modalities will be better by surface manifestations, or in other words, better by normal elimination. In psychotic stigma, when suppressed, it involves the pelvic and the sexual organs. So out here in the psychotic stigma, it creates the worst form of inflammation. That is, there is infiltration of the tissues, causing abscesses, hypertrophy, and cystic degeneration. As you all know, in the psychotic myosm, you get hypertrophy, hyperplasia, and formation of cysts or outgrowths. So therefore, it infiltrates the tissue, causing the worst form of inflammation, as a result of which abscess formation, hypertrophies, or cystic degeneration will take place. He also further says that when the physical symptoms are suppressed, it may also cause symptoms on the mental level. So the mental changes also can take place, like dishonesty, moral degeneration, and mania. So when you treat patients suffering from the stigma of different myosm, the classification is of immense value. So therefore, Dr. Roberts says that when you treat the patients who are suffering from the stigma of the different myosms, this summary of this classification of myosm, what is given you, that is the SORA, the psychotic, and the syphilitic taint, has immense value. Why? The simillimum will be found with ease corresponding to the characteristic symptoms of the miasmatic stigma. Because if you know the miasmatic stigma, each miasmatic stigma has its own set of characteristic symptoms. So therefore, you can distinguish the soric stigma from psychotic stigma from syphilitic stigma. Therefore, Dr. Roberts says that the simillimum will be found easily because each miasmatic stigma has its own set of well-defined characteristic symptoms. So therefore, he says that, he further goes ahead and he says that, in fact, it can be taken as the totality. So therefore, you have to form the totality. So the characteristic symptoms of the miasmatic stigma, they correspond to the simillimum, which in turn is nothing but the totality, which will lead you to the simillimum. This totality will throw light and will help us to select the correct simillimum, which is applicable to the individual case. So naturally, this totality based on the characteristic symptoms of the miasmatic stigma will throw light in order to identify the correct simillimum, and it will depend on case to case with the different myosms. So therefore, it is applicable to the individual case having the different myosms. This in turn corresponds to the stage of development of the myosm. So then also you can also identify the stage of development of the myosm, whether it is in the early stage or whether it is in the late stage or whether it is in an intermediate stage. Depends upon the symptom classification and the progression of the disease. However, in cases manifesting a mixed stigmata, it should be always remembered the stigma which is more prominent should be taken into consideration first. Dr. Roberts says that in a case, you may be having a mixed stigmata. That means what? You may be having a mixed myosm, not only a single myosm, but maybe two myosms or all the three myosms which are present. And he said that now it creates confusion. Which myosm should we take into consideration to form the totality? So he gives a simple solution by saying that whichever myosm is prominent, that has to be taken first for consideration. As I just told you, all diseases are multimiasmatic, one being prominent at a point in time. So similarly, Roberts also says the same thing, that though the patient may have all the three myosms, whichever myosm is prominent, that has to be taken into consideration first. So the entry point of the case will be what? It will be those characteristic symptoms of the stigma of a particular myosm which is prominent. Now, this is because due to its prominence, it requires immediate attention. So why he says you have to take this? Because it is prominent, as a result of which you have to take immediate action, or you have to have immediate attention and then take action. When it is relieved by the simillimum, the next prominent stigma has to be taken. So in a case, you have three myosm, one myosm is prominent, for example, SORA, you've taken the individualistic characteristic symptoms of the soric stigmata in the case, and you prescribe the simillimum, then the soric stigmata subsides, then you have the two other myosms, psychotic and syphilitic. Out of these, again, you see which is more predominant. Suppose syphilitic is more predominant, again, take the symptoms, the individualized characteristic symptoms of the syphilitic stigma and prescribe. In this way, the syphilitic stigma will subside. Now, what is remaining? The psychotic. So in a similar fashion, you can also treat the psychotic stigma. So when relieved by the similimum, the next permanent stigma has to be taken. In this way, the patient will be free from the inheritance of generation, that is the miasm. So in this manner, you will be able to eradicate the inheritance of the miasm, which is seen from generation to generation, from one family to the other family. So basically, what are we doing? We are treating the predisposition of the patient, that is the fundamental miasm. So the fundamental miasm is nothing but the main miasm which is responsible for the disease. So the inheritance is taken away provided we follow the steps given by Dr. Robert. So basically, your evaluation or your observation should be totally correct in a case when it is multi-miasmatic. When it is multi-miasmatic or when a complex miasm is there, you have to see which miasm is predominant, followed by which and followed by which. For example, if according to your judgment and according to your observation, you think the psoric activity is heightened, so you can write psora +3, followed by psychotic +2, followed by syphilitic +1. So we know out here that in this case, the most prominent miasm is the psoric miasm, followed by psychotic and then by syphilitic. So in this fashion, we have to take the characteristic individual symptoms of the stigma of the psoric miasm, find out the similimum, give it, psoric miasm will be elevate, will come down, or the symptoms will subside. Then, as you all know, we have given the gradation of psychotic +2 in a similar fashion, find out the similimum, and the psychotic miasm also will be nullified, and then what's remaining is syphilitic +1. Again, find out the similimum, and in this way, in this particular fashion, the case will be cured and the inheritance of the miasms will be mitigated. So this is what, in short, Robert has to say, the conclusion of all the chapters in which he has described the miasm. This becomes a very important chapter because he gives you the key points or the characteristic symptoms or the characteristic points which you have to give attention to. So that's all. It's a very short chapter, only one page, but it has a lot of deep meaning. You have to study miasms properly, and then only you'll be able to understand the conclusion given by H.A. Roberts. So I hope you like the small video of mine. And so please subscribe if you haven't still, or if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe to my my YouTube channel, Homeopathy Super Sessions by Dr. Jagose. I made it very easy with easy points to remember and to understand. It covers up, or I'm trying to cover up all the symptoms, important topics of the UG and PG syllabus. Till date, it has 103 videos. Also, it has important tips how to crack the examinations, Viva question, theory questions, and much more. And recently, also, I put the MCQ videos in which MUHS has recently given the new topic of MCQ, which is again being imparted in the examinations. So please do spread the word about my channel so that the other patient or other persons can be benefited from different colleges. And if you like my video, please give it a great thumbs up and also share it. Thank you very much.